So first, before getting into the critical success factor, I think it was very important for us to talk about ideally what are the pros and cons that I have identified in the areas or the instances where I have been directly involved or led implementation with ZBB before. Starting with the pros, absolutely, I think it's paramount. One of the major advantages of the implementation is cost control. ZBB absolutely helps you identify and eliminate unnecessary. It gives you the right level of accountability, and it gives you the power as a financial professional and business partner to be able to question or have the business and the owners of the budget justify specifically the rationale behind those quote unquote hidden costs or hidden expenses that they're also all very much coveted in the past. Switching over to resource allocation, these is absolutely important as well in terms of ensuring that the resources are correctly allocated to the areas with the highest strategic impact. Ultimately, every single budget owner has been prone to try to be very protective of their budget in vis-a-vis the other areas or the other functions, and this resource allocation principle or advantage of the implementation gives you the flexibility of ensuring that the right resources are going to be allocated to the right areas that have the highest impact. Switching over to transparency, as I mentioned in the beginning, transparency is another great advantage of ZBB, of any ZBB implementation, providing clear visibility into the spending and enhancing accountability. I do recall a few instances in the past where, as I mentioned, it's oftentimes when you challenge the business partners into the rationale of their budget, they are initially have been surprised because you're opening the door to ask them to justify the resources that they want to in the financial planning process, which probably surprised them at the beginning when you're implementing ZBB. Flexibility as well is another great example, a great advantage of an implementation, allowing you as a business professional or the finance professional, agile adaptation to changing business conditions nowadays in a current inflationary environment where unfortunate events are happening every single day, and it gives ZBB implementation gives you the flexibility to adapt and change and reallocate resources depending on where your priorities are, or even from a geographical, where should we restrain resources from one geographical area into other geographic areas, so to speak. Switching over to the cons of a ZBB implementation, I think it's very important for us to be mindful that it's a definitely resource-intensive exercise. ZBB requires substantial time and effort to implement and maintain. I would say that I think putting aside any type of tool that you may have or that you're probably going to look for if in case you're interested of implementing this, nevertheless, it does require you a certain amount of time and effort to run I would say a robust implementation. Resistance, as any change in human nature, I mean, employees may resist the rigorous scrutiny of their budget. Everybody's protective about their budget, and resistance can be something that you're going to be faced right on. Short-term focus also is another disadvantage, or I would say main challenge that you run into when implementing ZBB. The short-term focus can lead to a myopic focus on an immediate cost reduction. Everybody wants to try to get the low-hanging fruit. What are the biggest items that you can get from a cost reduction standpoint? But that's the risk of you're running the risk of focusing too much on the short term rather than looking at the growth areas where you would need to be mindful about how deep you can cut and justify the resources for the organization. Last but not least, complexity. The implementation itself can be challenging to implement in large organizations. I think it's very important for us to be mindful about that. With numerous cost centers, I think it's very important to do the work in advance to outline the different cost centers that you have within the organization. We try to be as practical as possible in the implementation, and that leads me into what I would define in the next slide, the critical success factors. Definitely, strong leadership commitment is top level support and commitment implementation. This is not going to be a finance driven solution. It has to be more than just finance driven. It has to be completely a full adoption and full I would say support from senior leadership of the organization beyond finance to ensure that the implementation itself is going to be successful. Second, you have to have clearly defined objectives, obviously, but you have to establish clear goals and objectives for ZBB to align with the organization's strategic priorities. What are those? What does success look like from an implementation standpoint? What is the specific time frame? You cannot leave it as is without that clear defined objective for the implementation. Also, you need to ensure that you have a full engagement of all stakeholders, including employees and managers at all levels in the budgeting process as well. I think it's obvious, but given how time-intensive resources this process or this implementation would be, also you would have to ensure that you have a comprehensive data analysis. You have to gather accurate and detailed financial data to support the ZBB process. I think it's, again, going back to the pre-work that you need to do prior to thinking about the implementation and ensuring that you have a robust enough data accuracy mentality or philosophy within the organization to avoid the organization to second guess data that you're providing when you're defining the cost centers or the ZBB cost categories that you're going to be overseeing. And last but not least, going back to having clearly defined objectives, but also having developing a key performance indicator set to measure the effectiveness of ZBB. I mean, are you going to be, you would quantify yourself as a successful implementation after managing reduction of 20% in 1 year, or you're going to be achieving diminishing the amount of cost center that you have within the organization by 50%. I mean, regardless of what your KPI is, clearly established metrics for adequately measure the success of that. So that leads me to my last slide. I would say, what are the key takeaways that I want to share with you as part of a ZBB implementation? Definitely, ZBB is a extremely powerful tool to control costs, allocate resources, and also enhance financial transparency and accountability. When it comes to its challenges, as I mentioned, the pros and cons areas, it requires careful planning, it requires commitment, and but nevertheless, it does provide you substantial short-term and long-term benefits as well. And last but not least, it gives you the flexibility to adapt to changing market conditions and achieve that long-term financial strategy.